Hi, and welcome to my borrowing podcast. We're going to have a quick introduction to borrowing and also learn about calculating interest. We borrow for many reasons, and borrowing is usually something that we do when we don't have enough money to pay for the entire thing up front. So we usually borrow for things that are really expensive. And so, like a house or some form of transportation, like a car or a motorcycle or a college degree or another type of degree. So, those are the reasons that we borrow in the first place. So, when you're borrowing money, you are also gaining credit, meaning it's this idea of buy now, pay later. So, you are getting something up front for putting very little money down. Maybe you're not even paying anything up front, or maybe you're paying for 10% of it up front, and then you're getting the rest of the money as a loan in order to pay it back in the future for a set amount of time. But you're also gaining debt because when you owe money, you need to pay it back, and that's what debt is. Debt isn't necessarily a bad thing. Most people don't have the money to buy a house to pay for it in full, and that's okay. It's good to be in debt so that you can get what you want as long as you're paying back everything on a regular schedule that has been agreed upon by you and the lender. If we think back to the principles of a market system, we know that profit motive is one of those principles. And the reason I share this is because lending institutions want to make a profit. Occasionally, there are some non-for-profit ones, but for the most part, people will loan you money because they hope to make more money in the future. And so there's some vocabulary that you need to understand in order to understand borrowing in general. So your principal is the amount that you are borrowing, and your interest is what you need to pay on top of what you've borrowed to the lender. And I mentioned one of the reasons that you need to pay interest is that because of profit motive, because lenders want to be able to make money. There are other reasons as well, such as the knowledge that there will be inflation, and also because there are costs associated with lending. But in general, you pay interest because somebody else, the lender, is doing you a favor by letting you borrow from them. And so interest is expressed as a percentage, and so that's what the interest rate is. It could be as low as 2% or as high as 200%, depending on the interest rate that you get and what you're borrowing for. Some other vocabulary is the down payment. As I said, you can put some money down, whether it be 10%, 20%, 30% down. You put that money down in advance and then you borrow the rest of it. So anything else that you are borrowing and that you owe is what is going to be your balance. And so for a house, for example, if you're buying a house, the house might be $500,000, and people often put 20% down. So they would put as a down payment $100,000. And so their balance without interest would be that $400,000. Balance can be defined with or without interest. The APR, or the annual percentage rate, is a really good thing to know. And it's the interest rate that is expressed as what you would pay in interest in a year. And it makes it easier to compare options because by law, everybody who is lending has to tell you what the APR is. But it's good to note then that if you're borrowing for less time, say 6 months, then you would just divide that interest rate in half because it's always going to be expressed in all the marketing materials as a year. And it'll say this is what the APR is. In terms of calculating simple interest, there is a formula and it's quite easy, but it can be confusing. So I'm going to take you through how to do it. But we need to understand that we are trying to find how much money that you're paying in simple interest. And so we need to times the principal, what you're borrowing, by the interest rate. And then for how long? As I mentioned before with APR, it's always expressed in a 1-year period. And so for those of you who are like, wait, is interest always calculated this way? No, it's not. There's something called amortization, but we're going to just do simple interest for now. So to calculate interest, we see that we have 3 loans. Okay, so what we are borrowing is $100 for cash, $700 for a television, and $12,000 for college. And so the interest rates on these things vary widely, and so does the amount of time that you're borrowing for. Now, if you want to pause the video right now and figure it out on your own, you may, or you can just follow along with me. To calculate, what we're doing is we're looking at the 100 times the interest rate, remember, expressed as a decimal, so we change the 40 to 0.4, the 7 to 0.07, and 3.5 is 0.035, and times it by the amount of years. And that is what is going to determine our interest. So you can see that for the cash, you're only paying $20 in interest. And for your college loan, you're paying a lot more in interest, even though the interest rate is lower because the loan is for a longer amount of time. And so not only do we want to see what our interest is, but we want to see how much our balance is with interest, how much we're going to have to pay overall. So you can see here that you'd pay in total 100, which is your principal, plus your interest, which is 20, 120, and then for the TV, 798, for the college loan, 18,300. And so that would be your balance with interest. Now we're going to look at, say, a loan where Jesse wants to buy a car, and we're going to compare interest rates, because notice here that the interest rate is higher if we only borrow for 2 years, or Jesse only borrows for 2 years, but it is lower if we borrow for 4 years. The question is, does that mean that Jesse should borrow for 4 years at a lower interest rate? Well, we have to calculate this in order to know. So we can see right here that we have 5,000 times 0.07 times 2 for the first one, and so on and so on. So let's see what our total interest is going to be. We see here that it is 700 as our total interest for the first one, and therefore we add the $5,000 that we borrowed, what we're borrowing without interest, to the interest, which is 700, and we're paying 5,700. Now, if you look, the interest rate was lower if we borrowed over 4 years, but you're actually paying more money, 5,950, so $250 more to borrow for 4 years. So that's why it's good to make these comparisons. These are some things just to think about when you borrow. You want to think about whether or not something is worth it. So taking out a loan for college, probably worth it. If you're charging dinner and movie tickets to your credit card and you're not paying your balance every month, you're going to pay interest on that. Is it really worth it then? I would say no. But a laptop, what you need it for school, probably important. Now, it's never a good idea to take out a loan to pay your credit card bills. You want to try to live within your means. But with a car, you need it for transportation. You probably might need to borrow some money to get your car running. Otherwise, you might have to take the bus if that's available, and you can do that. And then borrowing cash from a friend, they hopefully won't charge you interest. So it's not a big deal, but make sure you have the money to pay them back. So anyways, that is the end of Introduction to Borrowing and Calculating Interest. Have a great day.